Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Authors Vox. As always, I'm Nick, and today I'm joined by Sandra Wickham, the author of Death Coach, and I believe the second one's called Vampire Coach.
Close.
Close. I was almost there. Sandra, would you like to introduce yourself and the proper name of your second book?
Yes, well, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited for this. My series is called Death Coach, and each of the books is Death Coach something. The first one is just Death Coach. The second one is Death Coach Vampires. See, almost had it. And the third one is Death Coach Pharaohs. And I'm
Oh,
currently working on Death Coach Retreat. So that is the series so far. And I also help writers as well. So the other thing I do is I used to be a personal trainer, but now I just work with writers with their wellness so they can write more.
hmm. Okay, cool. Well, I only had the chance to read Death Coach. That being said, I'm very much looking forward to reading Death Coach Vampire when I have 5 minutes. Um, let's jump right in. Let's talk about you for a second here. I ask everyone the same question the first time they're on the pod, and that is because this is a fantasy podcast at its heart and its core, and it started as one. What is your favorite magic system? Now, a magic system can come from books, TV, movies, whatever you like.
I am pretty sure this has been talked about before, but my absolute favorite is Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn series. The magic system is complicated, but yet it makes sense and it's easy to understand at the same time. Um, it sticks with its rules the entire time as well, and it's just fascinating. I just love it. I wish I could write something like that, basically.
Yeah, it's Sanderson. I believe that wasn't, another author that was one of the many guests I've had for Voxbox. My friend Megan, she loves Mistborn. Myself, my favorite, magic system is the all of the Cosmere, the whole investiture scheme from Sanderson, so right at home here. That's the answer I'm always looking for.
Yeah.
That's Oh, man. Let's talk about you, a little bit more in depth, though, before we jump right into Death Coach. You said, before you were a personal trainer. So how long have you been writing?
So that's actually interesting because I started writing when I was tiny, tiny. As soon as I could write words, I was writing stories, before I could even spell. I have old notebooks from school where I was writing stories, when I was super young. I wrote my first novel when I was 9.
Oh,
My
wow.
grandmother typed it up for me on her typewriter, and I recently reread it. And it was exactly like The Goblin and the Princess series I was reading at the time, but I still love that I wrote that. But then I got into the fitness stuff and I actually competed in fitness in the IFBB, so like professionally for like 10 years. And I didn't really read much or write during that whole phase. Also in university, I was forced to write essays. I went to university for English and drama. So I was forced to read and write a gazillion essays. So that kinda sucked the love of writing out of me for a little while too. So I had university and then competing, and then once I stopped competing, I got back into the writing. So I've really been writing all my life. I just had a chunk there where I kinda stopped.
Fair enough. I can attest, taking English in university kills your love of reading and writing because it's all it
Right?
is for 4 years.
And it's stuff
It's
you're
rough.
forced to read
Oh,
and write
yeah,
about.
and it's stuff ironically, for me, it was stuff that on my own I would have loved to read, but then someone was like, "You have to read this." I was like, "Well, now I don't want to, so thank you for that."
Exactly. I did do some
Uh,
cool stuff, like I took Old English and Middle English as part of my degree, and that stuff was fun, but, like, we got to, translate Beowulf. And stuff like that was cool, but, when you've got all the courses with all the books and it's just, like, so much, right? Yeah.
I remember I had friends who were in, like, psychology, and they're like, how many textbooks did you have to buy?" I was like, "Well, I had to buy, like, 36 novels." And they're like,
Yeah.
"Well, that can't be that expensive." And I was like, "You would be wrong. It was about $1,000." So, I was like, "Close, but no." Um,
Yeah.
so after competing and after, going to university and stopping for a little while, was there something specific that pushed you back into the writing, or was that, just, natural course kinda thing?
I actually had a client who, um, was really into reading fantasy, and she had a stack of R.A. Salvatore books that she brought one time wherever we were, and I was like, "I would like to read those," and that's kinda how I jumped back into it was with those books. Um, And then, of course, once I started reading again, then I started writing again. And also, once I stopped competing, I had more brain power because when you're competing, you're on low carbs and you're training all the time and you get kind of stupid a little bit. So then when I stopped, I was like, I can write again.
Mhm. I R.A. Salvatore, another big name for me. That also, ironically, is what got me back into reading for fun after university was his, Drizzt
See?
series, and I was like, "Yeah, this guy," I'm like, "This dude knows how to write." Um,
I have a good
so
fan
now
story.
that
I
we
have a
talk
good
about
fan story. Sorry. I have a good fan story
go
about the
please
cover
go
artist.
ahead.
If you want, if we can leave that till the end, but I have a good fan
No,
story.
well, you brought it up, now I gotta know, I have to
We
know.
have
I'm
to.
very curious this way.
So the Dritz covers were mostly done by Todd Lockwood, right?
Mhm.
Which I knew, and I was a big fan. I was at one of the conventions out west. It was in Seattle, I think, and I got introduced to someone named Todd, and we just kind of hung out for the convention as you do, and
Uh-huh.
just talked the whole time, the whole weekend, and then the last night at a party, I was talking to him. I think like about his daughter's dance classes or something like. And this someone came up to him and said, "Hi, Mr. Lockwood, how you doing?" And inside I went, "This is Todd Lockwood I've been talking to all weekend long." But he was cool about it. I think he saw me kind of freak out, but he was fine. Yeah. So I got to hang out with
Mhm.
Todd Lockwood.
That yeah, that'd be very cool. I don't know what I would do with that. I don't think I would have handled it very well. I think I would have freaked out a little bit. It's so good. So speaking of, you know, uh, meeting people and getting working on things, death coach is very much now that you've said, clients and everything is very much something that is probably something you're very familiar with being a coach. But, it's an added sort of to speak to the dead, middle of a revenge plot kind of thing. So, did this go through like when you were thinking of this? Was this based on? I don't want to say based on true experiences because I hope nobody was trying to murder you and your clients. But did you have any inspiration behind this, or did it go through a few rounds of edits before you finally landed on like the core narrative?
Well, I have written a lot of novels before this one. Ones that sometimes, would get a bite from an agent but didn't go anywhere, or ones that I just trunked right away. And like I've written a lot of novels. And I noticed that with all the new writer friends I was making, when one of their novels did really well, like it kind of took off, I'd be like, "Oh, of course you wrote that. Of course you wrote that. Like that seems like what you should be writing." So I kind of noticed that, and then I kind of flipped it around on myself. I was like, "Okay, so what would someone say? Oh, of course you wrote that." And so that's kind of how I came up with the life coach thing because I have been a personal trainer for ages. That's kind of what I've done all my life. And I even like I think post university I even looked into life coaching. So I was like, okay, this is what I'm gonna do. And then the life coach to death coach thing came to me, and I was like, okay, so we got ghosties and a life coach. So that's kind of how it
Mhm.
came about.
Well, that makes sense.
Right.
I would say that's a logical progression of A to B for sure. Um, Death Coach is an excellent book, and I thought it took me about a day to read, which is not unnatural for me, but there are a few things that made it stand out to me. And first and foremost is the representation of people with Down syndrome. And is it
Mhm.
is it is it Carm or Carmy?
Carm. Although my first readers, a lot of them said Carmy, but in my head, it's Carm.
Okay, I was reading it as both, and I was flip-flopping between the 2,
Okay.
but I wanted to make sure, she's one of the main characters. She's in fact, a central plot point as well. She's an excellent character, I would say. Um, you know, when you have a character like Carmy or Carm, uh, is it the world is a tolerant place, I would say now, but would you say that you faced any sort of, like, online discrimination or trolls when you had introduced a Down syndrome character in a pivotal role, or did you find that the response was one of support and acceptance?
You know what? I haven't had anyone say anything negative about her or the fact that I included her, which now that you say that, it makes me realize that's pretty amazing that no one
Mhm.
has ever said it. Everyone who has read the book loves her, loves her, loves her. And I haven't had to face any negativity about it. I was feeling the pressure about writing her more so not from the reader perspective, but more from the Down syndrome community perspective and being sure that I, represented well. And also because my son is only 11 and this character is a female and she's 17. So it's kind of like, okay, I don't exactly have that experience, but so I was always very conscious of representing the community and also not making the story about the fact that she has Down syndrome 'cause
Mhm,
we don't want that. Um, so she's a cool character that just happens to also have Down syndrome. It's not a center of the plot, like, it's not the main plot. It does come up, obviously, because she has Down syndrome, it comes up, um, but as part of her character, not like her whole identity.
mhm. I totally agree with that, and I was just thinking about this while you were talking, but, um, I had gone through a few variations of this question, and the one I was leaning towards was when you're writing characters interacting with Carm who have not interacted with or met her up until that point in the book, is it challenging to kind of you know, balance reality in that where you're like, how do people normally address and approach people with Down syndrome without coming off as like, say, too much in either direction of like too accepting and too non-accepting?
I actually use that as an opportunity to represent how different people react to Down syndrome. So, in some cases well, there's not a ton of characters in this story, but in at least one case, someone new is not too sure about her and, like, her capabilities, and will she understand me when I talk to her, like, that kinda thing, because there are still people
Mhm,
like that out in the world, so I took that as a chance to kind of demonstrate that you don't have to be afraid of people with Down syndrome, they you can interact with them just like any typical person. So I kinda use that, um, and then also I know so many parents with kids with Down syndrome now that I've been in the community for so long that I also wanted to represent that relationship as well and people who have grown up with people with Down syndrome around them and how they treat them as well, if that makes sense.
mhm. I know, I think that totally makes sense. Um, the character you're speaking of is, of course, Heidi within the first, like, 3 pages of the novel. So that's not spoiling anything. If you guys read the first page, you'll see exactly what we're talking about here. Um, but, I think what's also nice, and I can't remember his name right now, but the Ethan's brother, Charles's other son, his name is what
Darren,
is his name? Darren,
Darren,
thank you.
it's so long ago I
Um,
wrote this book, but yeah, and they're different,
I
right? That's probably what you were gonna say.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say I wanted to keep calling him Danny, and I knew that wasn't his name, but Darren what's interesting to me is that, Darren and Carm are, you're right, very different, but they are both great additions to the plot because they highlight, I wanna say, like, some of certain characters more human qualities. Like, Ethan specifically comes off a little bit right away as kind of like "Oh, I really don't like you, Amy," but however, he's always very nice to Carm, and Darren, which is nice, so it is a little bit redeeming to see that he doesn't, place any undue guilt on someone who was not involved in the reason that he dislikes our main character. Would you say there's any challenges writing Carm and Darren at characters like Carm and Darren, um, that you don't often find, or is it more of what we've been talking about proper representation as well as making sure you balance like each and every interaction?
Yeah, I think at the core, they are just characters that have to be developed with their own personalities and, you know, quirks and traits and all that stuff. The hardest part for me was how much dialogue to have them be doing. Because normally in a novel, that's what you have, right? You ask
Mhm,
some descriptions and you have dialogue. Um, and not all people with Down syndrome talk a lot, and not all of them speak really clearly. And so that's why I tried to do like kind of two versions. Carm, where she's kind of chatty, and Darren, who doesn't talk as much. So I think that's the
mhm,
biggest challenge is not giving them too much language if they didn't necessarily use it, or you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I do actually, I have a different question about dialogue later on. Um, but I do wanna switch focus here for a second and talk about, Amy, the death coach, the titular character, and, there's a lot that Amy goes through this book, solely not solely, I don't wanna say solely because that isn't true, but a lot of it's at the hands of her former stepfather. Um However, I will say this, and this does not this is a credit to you because I often don't get tricked this way. I thought the villain was gonna be somebody entirely different, and I thought I was right up until right when they revealed themselves, and I was like, "Oh, damn, I was wrong." But we have kind of 2 potential antagonists introduced very early on in the characters of Nick, and Ethan. At any time when you were writing this, did either of them take more of a full antagonists, position, or were they both just sort of always gonna be the characters they are?
I always had the big baddie in mind, so the stepfather.
Mhm,
Um, so yeah, that was my goal, was to not have you guys know. Oh, spoiler alert, by the way, is to not know who the big baddie was until the end. Um, but not doing it so obvious, because I don't like that either when I read a book and they're really pointing you at someone, and so you know that's not the baddie. So I tried to
mhm,
balance, who is it really? But that has happened in the other books I've written where I was writing and I had a plan because I outlined my novels, but I ended up switching who the bad guy was, which actually made edits terrible. But so I did do that in the third book. I switched pretty close to the end as I was writing it who the bad guy was going to be. So it can happen, but not for the first book. I tricked you.
fair enough.
I tricked you.
Yeah, you did. I'm not gonna lie, uh, I thought because, part of it is, like, people who have summoned, this evil spirit back. I thought it was gonna be Darren, I'm not gonna lie, I thought it was gonna be Darren holding, like, a secret sort of grudge against Amy
Yeah.
for
Hmm.
everything. And then I
Yes.
was like, "Oh, maybe it'll be Ethan." And then I was wrong again, and I'm like, "Okay, never mind. I'm gonna stop guessing now because I'm wrong every time." Um, the other thing is this is set in Vancouver, correct? Yeah, okay. I just wanna make sure I'm right because I can never tell. I always forget things like that. I've talked to a few authors who have, based their books in real locations, um, that people would be very familiar with, in terms of, like, you know, geographical location and everything. There's a few things that happen in this book that might be considered newsworthy if it actually happened in Vancouver. For instance, there is a moment where a character the doors open on the SkyTrain and a character is basically pulled out and splattered on the ground. Was it a challenge balancing what would seem realistic to people from Vancouver and what would be very far fetched, or do you find that it kind of lent to the nature of like the other thing is uh the the Aunt Jodine's store and the cafe and Amy's office all kinda get absolutely destroyed within a 2-day span. Do you find that that helped lend to the what's the word I'm looking for? Not aura, environment that was created by the supernatural nature of the book?
This is kind of always a problem for people who write urban fantasy or paranormal mystery, as I call mine, because you are using real world locations. So a lot of times we won't use actual names of cafes or places. We'll make those up so they're not exactly the same. But my goal, for sure, always is creating that suspension of disbelief for the reader. So hopefully, I have set up from the beginning these paranormal things going on, and they will just roll with things. If you can get the reader to believe your world and everything, then they'll just roll with things. Um, I didn't grow up, sorry. I grew up in Ontario, but I moved to BC for 25 years, and I spent a good chunk of that just off the drive. where this book is mostly set, and I just love it there. So, that was why I did that, and again, just hoping that people will just roll with, "Oh, it's paranormal," and, once you catch them into your world, you can kinda get away with some stuff.
Yeah, fair. That's totally fair. Um, Speaking of, catching them into their world, there is a moment in this where, in an attempt to contact her mother, Amy kind of pulls in and attracts one of my favorite characters in the book, Mist. Mist is in so funny to me, because she's kind of like a sarcastic wise ass who aids Amy throughout the novel. Um, was it the downside to this being that Mist works with the group, including, Liam, Carm, and Amy, and yet the only one who can hear and understand her is Amy. Is it a struggle writing a fourth member of the group that only one member can hear? Is that a challenge? Or does it make certain things easier where you don't have to explain things or
It is so freaking hard. And I didn't realize that at first. Like, I just loved the idea of this, one ghost who didn't really know who she was. And, Amy's the only one who can hear her. So I have a fabulous content editor who's also my cover designer, actually, Skyla Dawn Cameron. Did I say that right? Um, she caught me on that in her content editing, was like, "You're repeating yourself." She's like, "Miss tells Amy something, and then Amy has to tell everybody the same thing, and it got very, very repetitive, so I have to really be careful of that." Um, so it is challenging, but I still love the idea of this Miss character, so I'm dealing with it.
It's funny that you said that because my very next question is, dialogue is so
But
important to both the reader and the characters. And yet in this book, a lot of dialogue has to be retold to share with those who can't speak to ghosts. The question is, why would you do that to yourself?
I know it's
Because
so
it's
hard. I didn't realize it at first, but I'm kinda now I'm working on the 4th book now. I've kind of gotten a way to work around that, so it's not exactly repeated, you know what I mean? And just like
Uh-huh.
and plus now well, as the book as the books go on, the other people get used to her talking to people they can't hear, so that helps too, kinda like she doesn't have to explain that she's talking, you know? So that
Mhm.
helps too, I think, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like after a while, people would be like, "Oh, she's doing it again. Let's just to go wherever she goes." One of the things that I really enjoyed about this book is there is such a positive reinforcement on, uh, family members, and that doesn't just stop with Amy and Carm and Jodine, Liam and his grandfather, Charles, Darren, and Ethan. Every sort of family unit supports themselves, and helps each other, with these small businesses, as they, you know, go throughout the novel and face various challenges of natural or supernatural. Um, you said you spent time living just off the drive. Was there any was that one of the reasons why you chose to focus on like this um small business centered theme of support and growth, especially in Vancouver, which is like one of Canada's most large scale industrious cities? Or was it something that just felt right to write about?
I was gonna say I think part of it was subconscious. I grew up with a dad who was in a family business that actually didn't end up going well. Um, I'm my own small business, right? Indie authors as well, so love that.
Uh-huh.
But I've always loved small independent, whether it's artists, musicians, and of course writers. But also, I think that's my love of the drive too. And at least when I was there, I've been away for a while now, but it was lots of small businesses. And even now, if you go to stores that are, family owned or like, I just love that, right? Or
Uh-huh.
like craft fairs where this person has their own crocheting business. Like, I want to support that. So I think that kind of came into it. And being a mom definitely has me focusing on the family side of things. I think that's kind of where that came from too. So yeah, I might have to do some more digging, some more internal digging to figure that out, but I think that's why.
That's totally fine. I think it's such an important part of this novel, and something I can tell is gonna be important for the next 3, 3 books that I have yet to read. Um, but, overall, the book was surpassed my expectations completely, which is lovely in my
Yay.
own opinion.
Thank you.
Um, not I feel like I said that, it's just like, wow, he's very full of himself. I mean, I often set myself expectations, and it has surpassed my expectations that I had going into it, which is
That's
is
okay.
more about my own hangups than anything else.
Because you're more a fantasy reader, right?
I'm a
Than urban
huge
fantasy?
fantasy reader. Yeah,
Yeah, so
actually,
not so much urban fantasy stuff, right?
yeah, and
Yeah,
supernatural mysteries, are something I do like, but they're not like I don't stop at that section
your
and then
go-to
go,
stuff, yeah.
right?
So there you
Yeah.
go.
Um, that was all the questions I had about the book, but I do have 2 more questions for you. Now, I don't know how closely you've been following me, but I'm also an English teacher. I'm a high school English teacher here in London. Um And as a Canadian and as a mother, I'm sure you know that literacy rates in North America, not even just Canada, both North America, Canada, Mexico, the United States, all of it are in what I would call crisis.
Mhm.
Um, let's say you're standing in front of a high school English classroom or a high school university classroom. High school university classroom doesn't make any sense. A
I knew what you meant.
university English class. Um, And one of the students has asked you to give one good reason as to why they should spend more time reading and writing. What would you tell them?
So, I actually had a very positive experience recently, not high school, but I went into my son's class, grade 6, to talk to them about writing, and I was completely surprised about how many of them in the classroom were interested in writing, took diligent notes, and were, like, totally into it, and also how many of the rest of the class were big readers. They told me all about the books they were reading, and they really got into the writing prompts I gave them, like, they were super excited by the writing prompts. So
No,
that was a good experience for me, but again, that's younger, right? So that's maybe starts to fade as they get older. But my answer would be probably the therapy side of reading, and just how much it can help you deal with the world and yourself when you're reading. Um, Not just to lose yourself in the reading, which is also great. I'm all for that for therapy too, but also just to carry yourself um, better in the world as well. If you're reading, then you're going to be smarter, you're going to have better conversations. But really, I think for me, the benefit is getting yourself through tough times with books. So I think that would be my answer.
totally fair. I will say I'm positively stunned that you had the reception that you
I,
did.
I did not expect it. I didn't know what to expect really going in, and I tried to make it as fun as I could, but I was shocked at how many of them were like wanted to be writers. Maybe I just got lucky with this class, but yeah, it was really good.
That is a testament to that school is definitely doing something right, because I can tell you that is not the case across that is
Oh,
the exception, not the rule, which is unfortunate.
yeah.
Um, I have one more question for you. A structured question, that is, before we get to our 10, randoms, or not
Ah, yes.
randoms, either ors. Uh, let's say we have an author listening to this who is looking to do what you've done and publish their book.
Mhm.
Is there any advice you'd give an aspiring author?
I have so much advice. Also because I work with writers too all the time on how to write more and things like that. But so I'll try and keep this brief, but freaking do it. Just do it. Um, you're not going to become rich, but do it anyway. If publishing your work and like holding it in your hands, seeing it in print, having people read your words and fall in love with them is totally worth it. Um, I definitely am taking a like hobby approach to it right now. The best advice I think I heard was to do a series. If you're an indie author, um, do a series so that you promote the first book and they get hooked and they buy all the other books. So that is one way to actually make money at this. Whereas traditional publishing, you can't do that because they take the books off the shelves, right? Um, Don't put pressure on yourself to publish quickly. So that's the other advice I would definitely give is have if you're gonna do a series like that and try and make money from it, have the books done already. In traditional publishing, they say, "Don't write the second one till the first one is out there and you see how it does," but we don't have to wait for that. As indie authors, we can put a series out. Um, so I did start my second one before the first one was out for sale, but it wasn't far enough along because I would have been able to put it out faster. So that's my big advice. Do it, but take your time with the first launch and have stuff ready because if you can put them out quickly, then you keep them hooked and you keep them buying, right? I've only been doing one a year, which is not what I wanted to, but it's just life and stuff, you know? So even after a year, they can kind of forget about you, right? But if you're putting them out quicker, they're going to buy those up, right? So that's my advice. Freaking go for it and take your time with the first one and like kind of have your backup ready to go.
That's I think that's invaluable advice. I think, we've been getting a lot of, just go for it advice, but practical advice, especially the difference between traditional and indie publishing is
Hmm.
so important, and we don't get that enough. That's it for the structure questions. We now have 10, or what I assume will be 10, because sometimes I lose count and forget, uh, rapid fire questions,
Okay,
either ors.
I'm ready.
So uh, I just want to clarify, you don't have to give a reason. You just say either one or the other. Both and neither are also good options that people often forget about. So, ready? Pen and paper to write or computers?
Both. Actually, clarification pen and paper for outlining and
Mhm,
brainstorming, and computer for actually writing.
perfect answer. Google Docs or Microsoft Word?
Neither. Scrivener.
Also a good answer that we haven't gotten yet. Interesting.
What?
Um, yeah, not
Scrivener.
one. Edit as you go or when you're finished?
Both. I will do tiny edits just to get myself back into the story. Like I'll just go up a page or two to get
Mhm.
myself back into the story and into the writing. And if I find stuff, I'll kind of fix it. But most of it happens after.
Fair. Mountains or the beach?
Oh, that's hard. I miss the mountains in BC. I miss them a lot. But I also like the beach here in Ontario. I'll say both.
Both is also a good answer. Canoeing or kayaking?
Kayaking. I used to canoe a lot when I was a kid, but yeah, kayaking now.
I prefer kayaking as well. Um,
Paddleboarding,
um,
actually.
Paddleboarding is also fun. I will say that.
Mhm.
Um, Coffee or tea?
Coffee. Since my son, I never drank coffee all through university, even like I would drink tea. And then when my son was born, I found coffee. So now it's coffee.
Good, good answer. Movies or TV?
Oh, both. As long as it's Disney, Star Wars, Supernatural, like that kind of stuff. Because
Yeah,
now there's lots of shows too, right? So
yeah.
both.
I love Supernatural. Supernatural is such a good show.
I'm doing a rewatch right now. I'm doing a Supernatural rewatch right now.
We're going on a tangent here. I went to a Jays game last year and Jensen Ackles threw out the first pitch and I lost
Shut
my
up.
mind. Yeah, I went ballistic. Which I was like, this is actually more exciting than the game. Yeah,
Wow.
it was super cool. Uh, Animated or live action?
Both. Especially Star Wars. Both.
Agreed. I 100% agree.
Yeah.
Um, Sam or Dean? Yeah, well, there you go.
You just made that one up for me, didn't you?
I did.
Dean. I gotta say Dean.
I agree. Dean's cool. Dean's much,
Yeah.
much cooler.
Sam's a bit of a
Uh,
baby,
um,
you know.
Sam whines way too much, like the first
Yeah,
4
he's a bit of a
seasons. I'm like,
baby.
dude, oh my god.
Also, not as good an actor,
Um,
I don't think. Oh,
I don't know. I feel like later Jared Padalecki gets very good, but early on, and then like consistency throughout the show, it's Jensen Ackles for sure. He's Jensen's my favorite. He also played Batman in a few of the animated movies.
oh,
Well,
okay.
wow. Oh, great. Now I lost my train of thought. Um, I'm coming back to it.
Edit, edit.
Oh man, I don't even need to edit. I'm not gonna edit that much because it is what it is. Oh, I remember. I remember now. Okay. Long form novels or short form novels?
Um, how long and how short? I thought you were gonna say long form or short, like short stories.
Well, let's go. Difference between say like a short book like Mistborn or a long book like Way of Kings.
Okay. Used to be long. I used to love those big chunky fantasy books.
Hmm. Yeah,
Now shorter.
like
And that could
like
be
this thing.
because yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I still love them, but I don't have as much time to read now.
Hmm.
And also, I've been doing a lot of urban fantasy and paranormal mystery reading as kind of like research, and they're always small too.
Hmm.
Um,
Makes sense.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Final one is
Okay.
the question you thought I was going to ask, which is uh serials or one shot stories.
I love series. I really do. Um, I think I get that from my early reading of fantasy, right? Whether it's like a
Hmm.
trilogy or whatever. So yeah, I
Yeah.
rarely read standalones. Now that I think about it.
I don't like endings. I need stories to keep going, so I relate to
Ah,
that quite a
yes.
bit. Yeah. Yeah, which is
Yeah.
why I have the shelf behind me is actually all Star Trek books that are related to the series,
Nice.
which there's, 300 episodes of Star Trek, and I have 463 Star Trek books was my last count, simply because I don't like endings. Anyway, that was, 10 either/or questions with a couple supernatural facts thrown in there. Um, Thank you so much. This has been Sandra Wickham, author of the Death Coach series, joining me today. Sandra, would you like to promote anything before we say goodbye?
Yes. Go buy Death Coach anywhere you buy books. Pick up Death Coach. And check out my site, sandrawickham.com. That's where I have my books posted and also the things that I do with writers.
I second that. Absolutely go check out sandrawickham.com as well as buy Death Coach. The first one was fantastic. I'm sure Death Coach Vampire, the one I haven't read yet, and Death Coach Pharaohs are both equally as good. Thank you so much for being here. And yeah, stay magical, my friends.